All right.
All right.
So I have something on my mind
Okay.
due to mostly Twitter. And I read some story where this, as I recall it, 10-year-old child who'd been,
Oh.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
who had been either sexually abused or raped and could not get an abortion because she got pregnant from it and could not get an abortion in her state and had to travel to a different state to have a legal
Yep.
abortion. And then the person who'd posted about this was like, and no, this isn't this or this or this country. It's happening in the US. And I'm like, dude, if I read any anti abortion or like abortion related issues, I'm gonna assume it's the US. I'm actually not assuming that it's some other country. And one of the reasons for this is because now in Sweden, we're traditionally in the modern day and age we're relatively secular or atheist for the most part. We're not that big on the whole Christianity thing, and we certainly usually don't let it influence our governing of the country much. So abortions here are very acceptable, as is contraception. But whenever I have heard of abortion resistance in Sweden, it has been backed by American funded organizations based in the US. So no other country have I heard of or seen trying to push an anti-abortion agenda in fucking Sweden. This is why I associate anti-abortion sentiments with the US.
Unfortunately, you opened up a topic that's going to make me pull out my soapbox here real quick, and I apologize for that ahead of time. Here's the thing. You are correct. I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong in regards to it, and this isn't going to be a me defending where I live type of thing. I debated doing that at the very beginning, where it's just kind of like, actually, this is more of a kind of like collection of individual countries that's kind of under, bro. That I don't really have the time to sit there and explain U.S. politics, and that's less interesting, and I think less educational for some than what I'm about to talk about. Funnily enough, the word secular in and of itself has Christian connotations, and I've learned that recently. And I'm going to use specifically Christian here because a lot of people will say, oh, those Abrahamic faiths. Well, to be perfectly honest, according to Sharia law, you can get an abortion within 120 days. So there gets rid of Muslim aspects of it. So can't really pin that on there because that was a tweet that was also going around. And the tweet that you're quoting also made me think about that is saying that Abrahamic faiths is Islamophobic when it comes to that. The other end about it is I've been following a lot of Jewish people on Twitter recently. Recently, as in like past 2 or 3 years. And the way that Jewish people address their aspects of faith is it's constantly a discussion. And as you said in Sweden, when you go and you take a look at a lot of the Jewish people that are supporting, I'm going to say pro birth sentiments here, they are backed by specifically right wing Christian evangelicals, period. And the aspect about that is that it is so prevalent in our in a lot of aspects of society. Like I'm not going to deny that Sweden's secular. I don't know Sweden. I don't know anything like that. But some of the things that were brought to my attention to think about when it comes to culture, even if an atheistic aspect of culture is how many times, and I don't like you're on the online space, so I'm sure that you've heard it. How many times have you seen or read Christmas is secular? How many times have you taken a look at well, maybe not you here necessarily, but, like, I don't know if Sweden, you get Christmas and Easter off of school time. I don't know. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
we do, and certainly that is also based on Christian holidays. Absolutely true. So in that
Mhm.
sense, we do still have traditions based in Christianity for sure, and I would assume that some laws and values are also founded in that because we do hail from a Christian background. More recently than our Norse one, if we're gonna be like that. But more so when I say secular, I suppose I mean more so that like as a populace, I at least a couple of years back, I think we were one of the world's most atheist or non-religious nations. We ranked highest there, but that was a while back. I don't know how that's changed with immigration. Um, because I have this feeling that a lot of immigrants also bring more religion with them, whether that is Christianity or Islamic faiths, because there's also, there's this view that all immigrants are Muslims, but there's also, people of, for example, Christian faith living in these areas, predominantly Muslim areas, who also escape to Sweden or other countries, either because, well, war, or in some cases, I know at least one case personally through an old friend of mine where it was, you know, to escape religious persecution as well. So, you know, so I don't know how that has shifted the whole balance of, or balance, but the number of religious people in Sweden per capita. But we used to be at least one of the least religious countries in the world.
And I prefer that term least religious or non-religious type of thing over atheists because
Mm,
there are people because like you kind of addressed it a little bit with people from these other countries bringing their religion with them. And part of the aspect about that is religion is deeply tied to someone's culture type of thing, whatever that might be. It kind of goes into the difference between orthodoxy and orthopraxy, which I don't really know the difference off the top of my head right now. So please, by all means, go ahead, take the time to look up the differences of those. But like, there are atheist people who follow the religious practices and follow the laws of Judaism. They
mm,
do not believe, type of thing.
mm-hmm.
And that's okay because of how the orthopraxis, I think, of Judaism works. Says that you shall have no gods before me. Okay, well, if I have no gods, then I have no gods before you. Problem fucking solved, type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to clarify right now, since I have been talking about this, it is going to be my primary source of outside information in regards to Christianity, and that I am most definitely a non-Jewish person. So please follow up with first-hand sources if you can, preferably multiple, because you have Reform, you have Reconstructionist, you have Orthodox, you have all sorts of different aspects of Judaism, just like you have a lot of aspects of Christianity.
Yeah, and I should probably qualify my own statements by saying that I am technically a member of like the Swedish church, like the national Swedish church. I have never considered myself religious though. It is like because how it is for most people, not all people. There are definitely, practicing religious Christian Swedes as well. I am not one of them, and I would say most people my generation are not. Even if you go up a generation, even if you go up two generations, I'm not even sure you find that many Christians or like actually believing religious people. But I am a member of the Swedish church anyways. And that is because it's again sort of a cultural thing. You have your child baptized in the church more as a naming ceremony, and like we had a baby here. Here's our baby. Celebrates our baby, and this is what they're gonna be named. And then when you get to age 15, you have your confirmation. And usually that comes with some minor gifts. And that's why most, like, that is the main reason for most, at least in my area. I shouldn't speak for everywhere in Sweden, but for most teenagers uh, in my area, in my age group, the motivation for doing the confirmation was, oh, I'll get to go on a trip to Stockholm, and I'll get to I get some money from my family, and I get like a little bit of a party. Yay! That's the reason, not because I believe in any of the stuff that you get taught leading up to your confirmation. And it's also like hanging out with friends during the thing. And then what that does mean, however, as well, is that I actually pay a bit of taxes to the Swedish church. But I'm okay with that because it does allow me to, if I ever get married, have my wedding ceremony in like a stately Swedish church. It also um, allows, if I were to die, I can have my funeral can be held in the actual church, uh, and a bit of stuff like that, and it goes towards stuff like maintaining the churches, and I'm okay with that from a cultural and architectural standpoint. I do still value some of the things that is attached to that particular branch of Christianity, because the stately Swedish church, um, I know a little bit about this as well because one of my ex-boyfriends, both of his parents were priests within the stately Swedish church. And you need like if I recall correctly, you need a 5-year university level degree within theology to become a priest, and then you get to like work as, I don't know, I'm gonna call it an apprentice. It has probably some formal title at a church with a different with a supervising priest, and um, you're also, they do sort of try to see if your values go against the stately Swedish church, which is kind of weird because we have a stately Swedish church, but we're a very secular country anyways. But it's like some of these things are like your views on women must be in alignment with that, and you can't refuse to marry LGBTQI people, and you can't voice pretty much negative views on their human rights, etc. I would doubt that the racist beliefs should not slip through. Of course, it probably does happen still, as is always the case. It's not a perfect system, but yeah, the stately church is pretty inclusive and progressive in its values. So that is another reason why I don't mind supporting it, because it's not like it aligns with my values. Or at least it doesn't interfere with my values in a negative way. And if it did, if I found out that it did, then I would probably, stop supporting them with my tax money. I'm not really, I don't think, paying any of that tax right now because I'm unemployed, so,
I think sitting there taking a look at it is he kind of highlighted some of the points that kind of wanted to segue into anyway. Is that like some of the stuff that I mentioned in regards to holidays off type of thing. Here in the States, we have shortened hours during a lot of business hours, specifically on Sundays
Mm-hmm.
type of thing.
Yep, same here.
And for a lot of people, they don't sit there and they don't take a look at these things as aspects of Christianity or Christian influence type of thing. And just to clarify, I'm not against Christians. Christians are fine type of thing. They're great. In fact, most one of the people that I have a lot of these lengthy types of conversations with is a Christian type of thing. Um, but like it's more that people don't take a look at these cultural ideals. Like here's the thing. Here's the thing. If I went to go get a degree, at least here in the States, as a theologist, the only job available for me is some kind of priest. Theology is a huge topic, a huge
Mm,
branch of huge things, and the only thing that you can do with it is either teach theology or become a priest,
mm,
specifically of a major religion, we'll say.
mm,
But like if I went to go study theology, and I'm not saying that Jewish people need to let us do this, but I couldn't study theology and then go use that degree to go be a rabbi type of thing. They have their own rules for that, and their own cultural things, and that's great. But it's like I can't go to a school and get the education of these other cultures, of these separate things. Um, and that's something that absolutely bothers the ever living heck out of me. Because it was something that I was actually looking into circa 2014. Was like, I like mythology. I'll go study mythology and theology, and oh, that's the only thing I can do with it. Never mind,
mm.
type of thing.
Well,
But
on the other hand, maybe you could have started. I'm just saying, you could have probably done a better job at running a congregation or whatever it's called than a lot of the people who actually do those things in the US. So,
yeah, I just didn't want to sit there, be a big fat phony, and preach things that I don't necessarily believe in.
understandable.
Um,
Understandable.
but like the aspect that the point is that a lot of these cultural influences are influenced directly by Christians or Christianity. And so like a lot of people they kind of get their hackles raised up when I would use the term Christian atheist. As in, you don't necessarily follow the religion, but you follow a lot of these aspects within your culture that are shaped and influenced by Christian things. You named a bunch of them:
Mm,
having a baptism, having a celebration at 15, getting married in a state church, getting your funeral in a state church. All of those cultural things that are important to Swedes shaped by Christianity. But I know that if I was talking maybe to another Swede that I hadn't had this that I don't have repertoire with or rapport with, I'd probably be like, well, that's an oxymoron. It's like, no, it's not. It's just not something that you're used to hearing.
yeah. On the other hand, I don't think like because I mean that's another thing. I could be wrong about this. It could just be the people I'm around. But I feel like yeah, I'd probably no. I feel like for the most part, Swedes aren't so touchy about religion as a topic. Uh, we're more so likely to get very uncomfortable because most of us don't really bother much with religion. Like we have our cultural, um, cultural events and everything that we do stick to. So we follow the culture that we have. Uh, and like some of it which is heavily influenced with by Christianity, and some of it which isn't. Um, but yeah, a lot of Swedes might more become uncomfortable when confronted about questions about religion, or they will just write it off as I believe in something after death. I'd like to believe in something after death. I don't know what, but maybe there is something. I don't know. Show me some evidence and I'll consider it. Um, whereas I feel like when you talk about religion in the US, things get more heated, or with Americans. That's my personal experience. I have no scientific backing of this. This is just based on having discussed religion, both with non religious Swedes as well as Christian Swedes. Um, I should say free church Christian Swedes. I don't think I know any active practitioners who are members of the stately church actually, because we have the stately church which is heavily regulated in how it functions, and then we have the free churches which they do more their own things within the law, of course. But yeah, they do their own things. Uh, and so the people that I've known and had discussions with belong to some of those, um, or used to belong to those, or have family that belong to those. Uh, and so I've had conversations with Christian Swedes. I've also had discussions, sometimes arguments, sometimes less than pleasant ones, with Christian Americans. And it's just that, like I said, I feel like Swedes might get uncomfortable talking about it, but it rarely gets very heated at all. Um, and that's the difference, I feel. Where it's, I mean, it is very much up to the individual. I've definitely had good conversations with Christian Americans who definitely respect other people's opinions and beliefs. Um, but it seems so much more prevalent that, like, you have to believe the same thing that I do, otherwise I'll shout at you until you do.
Yeah, it's proselytizing.
Yeah. Or also like judging the moral character of a person solely based on whether or not they follow the same religious doctrine as you, which is pretty
Yeah,
wild.
there's a lot of things that are like that. Unfortunately. But like I think what it comes down to is, and again, like I said, a majority of what I'm going to use as reference here is stuff that I've observed from talking and listening to Jewish people. With there is a joke that I've seen them say a couple of times, which is two rabbis, three opinions, or three rabbis, five opinions type of thing. And it's not saying that anyone's wrong. Like, people, from what I've seen, will not necessarily say that you're wrong. They'll say that this is how I interpret it, this is why I think that you are wrong, type of thing. Like, they specifically put it phrased that way, type of
Mm.
thing, to which the other response is, well, here is this opinion that I have formed based on that type of thing. But with Christians, right, you have so many different denominations that is this is what you have to do or what you don't have to do. Because, and I'm going to say something controversial to a lot of people here, Catholics are Christians.
Yeah, I didn't think that was up for debate.
Oh, oh. Depending on
I'm
the
sorry,
level of
but
person,
like to
if you were
me,
talking,
that's just like, of course they are.
depending on the level of person, like you know how you said that you had like good conversations and bad conversations with Christian
Ooh.
Americans?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. If you get a conversation with one of the really intense ones and you say something like that, they will lose their mind.
Yeah, okay. Fair enough.
But like and like you have all sorts of these other aspects and all these other objects in regards to it, like like it's hard to say on culture without going and just criticizing Christianity a lot because it's not Christianity that's necessarily the problem. It's how it's used and how it's interpreted.
Mm,
That's the problem.
absolutely. I mean,
Um,
that's the case with a lot of religion. Like, yeah, and it becomes also a question of like what times do you interpret these supposedly holy and perfect writings, which have been rewritten a number of times, and new things are included or excluded depending on who's making the decisions. Um, which things do you interpret literally, and which things do you interpret figuratively, and which things are, just twisted by humans trying to interpret God's will, and which things are actually accurate. And this will vary from person to person. some will say, well, this verse in this part of the Bible, that's supposed to be taken literally, but this other verse over in this part, that should be taken as a metaphor for this and this. At least that's my experience talking
When
religious
it
texts with people.
when it comes to, I'll use the term the Torah here, or the stolen books of the Old Testament. Ask Jewish people.
Yeah, but
They actually sit
I
there and
mean to
talk.
say, like,
Yeah,
I've mostly talked to Christian people, and you get different answers depending on who you
ab-
ask.
absolutely. It's just part of the reason why I say that is because like a lot of people like to quote different laws and stuff like that. Like there was one that's just like, oh, so the Bible says that I should stone my brother to death if he's a drunkard. Well, no, the Torah states that you should kill your brother if literally nothing else to get him to change his destructive, and harmful behavior to others has worked. And it lists out like all of these different things, which is edited and changed in
Yeah, and I think that
certain
people
regards.
need to also remember that some of the things, most of the things written, I would say, are more so like relevant for the society and type of life and even technology that was available at the time of writing. I would use the whole not eating shellfish
Okay.
as an example because they go bad pretty fast and you can get sick and die. Kind of the same thing with pork. It's much more like it's much easier to get sick from pork than it is from beef. Uh, Particularly if you can't store it in a good sanitary way or cook it to a good degree, which, that might be a slightly harder to accomplish if you don't have a fucking fridge or a stove and a thermometer and all these other things. So yeah, having guidelines for don't eat these types of food within brackets, you get sick from them, and that's because you can also interpret sickness as being well, you eat these things, you get struck down by God by sickness.
Mhm.
Well, or you just didn't either prepare them or store them in a way that preserved them well enough.
Absolutely. And like the other aspects about it too is in regards to that specific thing, just a little bit of a side note is like a lot of people criticize the no pork rule and stuff like that. It's like bacon's the greatest thing on the planet, especially if you're an American, apparently. It's not, but
Yeah, I was
like
going to add also, like, if you don't want to eat shellfish or pork,
yeah,
I don't give a shit. I'm just saying the rules were probably, in my
absolutely.
uneducated opinion, written due to sanitary reasons more so than anything else. So you wanna
And
keep not eating it? No skin off my back. Is that even an expression?
yeah, it is.
Hmm.
But like people who don't necessarily want to do that have various reasons in regards to it. Like keeping in contact with one's culture. That is one that I've heard quite a few times in regards to it. It's the same reason why we've looked into some of the stuff in regards to our culture, our myths, our legends type of thing, people that we come from, because it's how we can be connected in regards to that. And I've seen like a lot of criticism because, oh, well, not eating this is for these reasons because somebody dictated it as a silly reason. Well, to be perfectly honest, it's not harming anybody, so why the fuck do you care?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's the same as, like, if someone came up to me and criticized me, like, why aren't you working on Christmas, you lazy fuck? You don't even believe in the Christian God and Jesus and all of that. So why are you not working on Christmas? You have no reason to celebrate this. And it's like, well, it is a part of my culture and it is something I've grown up doing and it is something I would like to continue to do with my family because I value my family, not because I value the Christian God or Jesus. Um, and of course, I will work Christmas if my work demands it, given the right level of compensation. but I'm not just gonna work like it's any other day during that day. Actually, I don't think that's even allowed in our laws because it's regulated by holidays. You have to compensate extra.
Same here, but like it's part of the things. For me, it's a language thing because while I do appreciate a lot of the things that I've gotten, and while I do understand why a lot of the things are the way they are today, if I change the language and the way that I work in my house, I can make it easier for those that come after or those who come to me understand these different cultural aspects to it. Which is why, even though I wish my mom a Merry Christmas because my mom celebrates, or people who wish me one type of thing when it's around that time, I'll wish them one. Um, why in the house we celebrate Yule. Yule. Don't celebrate Christmas, we celebrate Yule because Michi celebrates Yule type of thing.
Well, here the distinction is difficult to make,
Intention. Well, yes.
as in Sweden. And for those who don't know, Christmas, the word for Christmas here is jul. Uh, so and there's no link in the Swedish name between Christianity and Christmas. So, but it is a Christian holiday for us.
You celebrated also the 24th, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. See, for us, it's a different day
Yeah.
type of thing. So it's a little bit easier to distinct. But like it's not that important in the grand scheme of things. I'm not gonna change a lot of people's opinion by referring to why I might have something pulled up or something put up in my house as a Yule tree or these are Yule gifts or anything like that. It's not gonna make that much of a difference, but it makes me feel more consistent with myself
Yeah,
type of thing.
which is fine.
I don't have a holiday around that time, so
Yeah, I think also as a non-Christian person who doesn't care too much about like active religious practices, it is so much easier to just go along with the societal norm. Like, I'm not going to apply to celebrate my own religious holidays with my employ. Like, I'm not gonna ask for time off on a special day to celebrate some other religious holiday. I might as well just take the days off that are there as a standard in the society I live in, because as a person, as an individual, I don't have any strong opinions. So, you know, might as well go with this that is already here. And I'm not gonna question where it comes from, sort of thing. Like, I am aware of where it comes from. But I'm not gonna be like, no, I will not celebrate these things, or not. I refuse to do anything on these days because I don't believe in these things. It's for me as a person, they have very little religious connotation for me as an individual, or for my family and me. It's more like this is just something we appreciate spending time together, and our family's traditions. Another thing is also like, if we want to talk about the level of not having religion involved in Christmas celebrations, a pretty sizable part of Sweden on the 24th, which is our Christmas celebration, will at I think 2 o'clock uh, in the afternoon, we'll sit down and watch Donald Duck's Christmas special. And that has been a thing for many years, like every fucking year, my entire life. And like that is a hard set tradition for a lot of families. Like, you do not miss Donald Duck on Christmas. You sit there and you watch it. You know word for word what's coming. Doesn't matter. How's that like? How's that related to baby Jesus? I don't know. We do it though.
It's part of where it comes around, and the fact that it's normalizing a lot of the Christian aspects to it. Not again, this isn't a criticism of how you guys do anything. It's just it is an observation.
Yeah.
People want to do that stuff, and people want to sit there and get that. That's fine. Recognize where it's coming from, and then we're good, type of thing. Because there's also the fact that, as you said, to circle back to the very beginning of the conversation, you don't deal with a lot of the evangelical fundamentalists that we do,
Yeah.
type of thing. So while it's not that big of a deal if I went into Sweden and was like, I celebrate Yule instead of type of thing,
Mhm.
it's not going to be that big of a deal. Me putting the distinction and trying my best to separate myself from the cultural aspects about it allows me to, as mentioned, better understand, better empathize, and better relate to a lot of the other people who are in the trenches with me against these evangelical fundamentalists
Yeah.
type of thing.
And I understand it so much more when I'm looking at the US, and it is it is honestly difficult for me to even imagine that the things that I read about the US are true. Like, I'm not saying that they apply to everyone in the population as a whole. I realize that the sensationalist news that I read by and large apply to small groups of very vocal people. But like, I've never in my entire, like, I don't know, maybe this is just something you don't see very often in the US either. I just have this image in my mind that you do. Uh, but I've never in my entire life anywhere in Sweden seen a sign such as Jesus hates the gays, or Jesus hates this, or God hates this, or anything like that. I've also never seen a sign such as abortion is murder here. I don't think anywhere. I also, like, it's just, I don't think I've ever heard of a case where, a doctor has been killed for providing abortions either. I don't know. It's a wild reality for me to even imagine a society where that's a thing.
I am going to paint a picture, and it is going to be a little bit more expansive than some of the stuff that we've already talked about. First off, I haven't seen any God hates the gay signs in person, and there is a decent amount of stuff like that that's going on there. Homemade signs, they are a thing. You saw images of them 30 miles, like pictures that were taken about 30 miles away from where I'm sitting right now. Are you, probably not, but I'm going to ask anyway, are you familiar with the concept of a sundown town?
Of what?
Sundown town.
No.
Sundown towns were horribly, for lack of a better term, prejudiced areas where if you were a minority in one of those when the sun went down, you'd be lucky to make it out of the town
I think I've
come
actually
morning.
heard of it now that you describe it. I had just forgotten the term, but yes, I have heard of it.
Mhm. As little as 40 years ago, the town where I spent my early childhood was considered one. I'm not going to name that town because a lot of the things have changed since then. About 30 years ago, there was a white supremacist headquarters called the Aryan Nation that
Heard of that.
was 30 miles away from where I'm sitting right now. And while I do we had a topic in regards to specifically we had a small chat regarding specifically racism and stuff earlier today, or not today, earlier this week, where I said something along the lines of if a lot of because it was another tweet that was criticizing a lot of the different areas, and it was kind of like a lot of the racism that's here is more violent and explosive. I'm
Yeah,
not necessarily going to comment on a lot of Europe because I haven't been to Europe, but from what I hear, it tends to be a lot of more microaggressions or stuff like that. Still problems, but
absolutely.
not as bad.
They're
And so,
also
like,
very different because, like, Okay, so first of all, Europe is comprised of different countries with very different cultures and backgrounds. I realize that different states also are have different
Technically the
histories,
same. Yeah.
but it doesn't feel like it is to the same extent. Because, like, if you look at the history of Britain, let's say Britain, it is rather different from the history of Finland. Uh, because Britain, don't know if you guys know, but it was sort of an empire, kind of colonizing a lot, whereas
We
Finland,
were a part of it, yeah.
yeah, um, whereas Finland was conquered by Sweden and also by Russia, and they've had to fight for their independence, whereas Britain has fought against other people's independence. Rather different in history, I would say. I dare argue that they are quite different um, in what they like. And these things do affect countries going forward. Um, so we within Europe we have ranging from like this country was barely a country because it kept being conquered by various other countries surrounding it to this was a superpower with an empire spreading across the globe. And so to say that our foreign policies and everything are homogenous within Europe is kind of weird, and the way that different countries look at the rest of the world or other ethnicities is also kind of weird because it's very different what kind of experience we've had with other cultures. As a Swede, growing up here, I had there was, as far as I know, there was one there were two kids from one family of immigrants in my primary school growing up. And then there was one Asian kid who was adopted. So like that was the extent of it back when I was growing up. We've had an influx of immigrants since then, so it looks different today. But that's my background. Like most when I grew up, most of the people that you would see who did not look Swedish were adopted, with a few exceptions. Um, and racism, yeah, absolutely a problem in any shape it takes. But we haven't had the same history with it where we've had slavery be such a big part of our history to where it's a civil war, whether or not we're gonna have slaves or not. So it's gonna look different. I don't know what point I was trying to make. I'm sorry, I got lost in my own words.
It's fine. It's like part of the problem in regards to how the US handles things is we've been othering since the beginning.
Mm,
So like whereas you guys had a lot of aspects in regards to it, we were just as bloodthirsty as Britain was when it came to expanding an empire.
mm,
And we tried to unite behind rallying cries. Manifest destiny being a really big one. And like while it isn't necessarily the same as like trying to sit there and fight for necessarily our country's sovereignty after gaining it from Britain
mm,
at the very beginning, um, part of the aspect in regards to it is we've like we try to make ourselves appear this way and kind of address different things. And part of the reason why I know a lot of that is because I had the very fortunate, some would say unfortunate, but I had the very fortunate aspect of moving around a lot through grade school
Mm.
type of thing. I went through, I grew up in the Pacific Northwest for a lot of the early childhood. I moved over to Pennsylvania for some of it, type of thing, and how they taught and a lot of the things that they focused on were maybe similar, but they were still like different emphasis depending on where it was. And then after living in Pennsylvania for a bit, I lived in Hawaii.
Mm.
And that in and of itself was kind of eye-opening to a lot of things because one, I was the minority. I was the Howley in the school.
Mm.
And then, like, that's where you kind of learn things about different aspects of colonialization, less about, and then the United States annexed Hawaii, and more about, and then the Dole family undercut and superseded the royal family of Hawaii, and the only way that people could do it peacefully was to make Hawaii a state after making Queen Liliuokalani a figurehead type of thing. And like it's a lot of these different aspects and a lot of these different perspectives because we try our best to get behind this and to look as this ginormous monolith. And the reality about it is we're not. Like I can go over and take a look at different things and figure out what countries we destroyed down the street because of some of the stuff that's put up. I have to read between the lines with some of the stuff that I'm taking a look at, but like there was a trail aspect in regards to it about Native Americans and how one ended up coming back and founding this little area after being um, taken to schools and things that you may have heard about, similar in Canada type of thing. And like it's tough to sit there and reconcile that and to look at it and be like, yeah, we're seen as this, we're seen as that because it's the image that we put of ourselves out there. Like we try to sit there and say that it's the majority wins in regards to it, which is why one of the Midwestern states has uh close to 60% of the popular votes being on the left end of things, but 60% of the seats are going to the right wing.
Yep. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. I've watched some stuff about you guys' electoral system and all that stuff. That is a can of worms for a different day, I feel.
It most definitely is. But like it's oh, we have democratic elections and we have this
Oh
and
no,
this
you
is what it
don't.
is and
Mm-mm.
it's you can't
Far.
sit there and it's a lot.
I mean, you guys are a republic, not a democracy.
But that's something that's said.
I
It's a
know.
lot of the
I know.
things that's there. It's buzzwords, it's catch-alls, it's
Mhm.
like that.
Yeah. And like I will say this, you guys' election system is archaic and dumb. Uh, because most sensible countries, and I'm gonna say this in a very rude way because I'm
I'm
not
not
in the
gonna take offense
headspace
to
to express myself in a
it.
different way. Most sensible fucking countries realized that, hey, we no longer have to send a person carrying votes by horsemen. Maybe one person can have one vote that is directly counted towards what the fuck they want instead of one person votes for one person to vote for them. I don't know.
There's there's a lot. And there was actually a meme that I saw about it earlier today, speaking of stuff like that, is it was a Twitter post and it said, "Thank God I don't live in North Korea or one of those communist countries, and I live where there's freedom, where we have unelected wizards go into and talk about or go into a dark room and try to channel the spirit of Benjamin Franklin to see what he would have wanted."
Oh, it's so fucking accurate, it hurts. Oh god, I'm so happy I don't live in the US.
Because like part of the things and this is I'm glad that this is here because then I can talk about it here and I don't need to sit there and keep it quiet in regards to it. Part of my fucking problem with this entire fucking system, as it is right now, is the fact that we have changed this piece of paper
Mm-hmm.
that everyone holds so fucking sacred.
Yep.
We've changed it, I think, over a dozen times. I don't know. I haven't counted. I'm not a civics major. I'm not a US history major.
Yep.
And you want to know what the best part is in regards to some of this shit that's there? Because people are like, oh, you can't touch this, you can't touch that. We've removed stuff from it too! We had prohibition. It was a big
Mm-hmm.
thing in American history. There
Mm-hmm.
was an amendment to outlaw alcohol, and then it went bad. And we were like, oh, fuck.
This didn't happen. People seem to like their alcohol. Let's get that back to them. Yeah.
Fuck it.
Maybe you guys should move back to prohibition just to be like, yeah, well, we removed this. Maybe we can, you know, I don't
Might get people to focus on some other fucking shit for a change.
know. Yeah. And all right, so I'm gonna just shift back to what we were talking about, what
Go
I
for it.
brought up in the beginning about like abortion.
Go
Um,
for it.
and this was something I don't know where I saw this, but or someone raised a point that we get trapped in the discussion of when does life begin and stuff like that, where honestly it doesn't even fucking matter because you cannot force someone to donate an organ, not even after death. At least the way it works here. I don't know. I don't think you guys do that either. Where it's like, okay, so we can't harvest organs from dead people because that is violating their bodily autonomy,
Hmm.
which I'm okay with. I'm okay with that stance. But to then say we can force a woman to give birth, to house a fetus in her own body, that's not violating her personal bodily autonomy. No, 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 no. That's weird. To me. To me, that's weird.
I had a discussion about that on Twitter because it was brought up. Somebody that I follow talked about it before. Len Penny does Scottish Words of the Day stuff. She wrote a poem about this stuff because it's big. A lot of people see what's going on in the United States for various
Mm-hmm.
reasons. We're a big place. We got a lot of people, and we got a lot of people on the fucking internet. Um,
Some of whom probably shouldn't be on the internet.
um, and so she wrote a poem about it, even though she's in Scotland, and she had a comment on there, and somebody said, "Don't do this with the forced birther because of whatever reason." Generally speaking, the comment was very objectifying type of thing,
Mm.
and I ended up having. I'll be completely honest. I had a bad faith discussion with them. I did not go in regards to this because I knew this person wasn't going to engage me in good faith type of thing.
Absolutely.
And the discussion that was some of the things is like he went to a point where it was, were you a fetus? And it was like, I don't know what that has to do anything. Should I have kept my nail clippings because they were once living tissue? And it got to a point where after I brought up the point of bodily autonomy, because it's like you like I mean, to be perfectly honest, only one of us here believes that women have less rights than a corpse. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, you're the one that compared humanity to fingernails, and it's like, okay, I mean, that's not what I said at all, but continue, type of thing. Because I don't even know where the fuck this aspect of conception came from. I know there's a lot of theories in regards to it, and a lot of stuff that kind of ties back to a lot of the religious fundamentalism that we were talking about earlier. But I really don't want to get into that because I don't know that for a fact. But like a lot of the stuff that's quoted in books is at first breath type of thing. Because the way that this is about to be phrased is going to be very offensive to some. A fetus, until it is viable to be on its own, is a fucking parasite.
I agree.
And while that is perfectly fair that you believe and you want to cherish that, and you can't wait for it to be a baby and all that other stuff, that is fantastic. And I'm glad for you. I don't want my friends, if they don't have to carry a fucking parasite in them for 9 months if they don't want to.
Yeah. And I also saw someone arguing, like, well, because someone was saying, well, what if what if a woman is raped and she's now forced to carry a baby and she didn't, and someone argued, well, um, rape is obviously a horrible situation, but she should look at this as an opportunity. And I'm like, that is
An
so
opportunity to be
fucked up.
traumatized, but an opportunity to remember trauma for the next 18 years.
Yeah, not
Oh,
just
but you could give it up. Oh, but you could give it up for adoption. You mean like the thousands upon thousands of fucking kids in the foster system that aren't getting anything? I'll adopt your baby. There's plenty of babies out there to be fucking adopted. How about you go fucking put your money where you're... Okay.
yeah. Um, not to mention, and I'm not saying that. Oh well, I'm not saying that kids who are adopted or are in that system would be better off dead. I'm not saying that. But I am saying that if I don't believe that I can be a suitable parent, and I feel like, I don't want to put a child into that system, that type of life. Because it isn't an easy life for a lot of people. I mean, even those who do get adopted, even into the best of families, some of them suffer a lot of mental health issues related to being adopted and not feeling like they have their identity and stuff like that. Suicide rates for kids who've been adopted are higher, you know? And I'm not saying that it's better to not exist, but I am saying that using adoption as like, well, this solves everything. It doesn't solve everything, especially not in a society where mental health is not prioritized in any way, shape, or form, such as the US. Because, like, what if you don't have health insurance and you can't get help with your mental health issues, your depression, your anxiety, your suicidal thoughts because you can't afford it? But those things, they're not necessary for anyone, but, we value life until we don't. Honestly,
What's that?
it's not even about life or death or when a fetus becomes a child or anything like that. It is all about controlling women's bodies.
People.
That's my view.
It's about controlling people and trying to get more people into what you want them to be into.
Yeah.
But a couple of thoughts in regards to that. I don't think that necessarily that people who are in the adoption system should have been aborted.
No, 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 no. I'm not saying that either. Not in any
Generally
way, shape, or form.
speaking,
My
the
mother's
the, the
cousin
other aspect.
is adopted and he's
Mhm.
very successful and it can be great. But I'm not saying all I'm saying is do not use adoption as
Right, right.
a bat
I'm
for
I'm just clarifying my
yeah.
point because another thing that comes up is, well, don't you wish that, or aren't you glad that you're not aborted? Well, to be perfectly honest, dissecting things in my life in regards to my family, really wouldn't have made much difference in regards to them. So, yeah,
Yeah, my
but
stance on it
that's
is if
me
I
being
were
a cynic.
aborted, I would never have known.
hmm
I have no issues with
The
it.
the other end about it is you can't sit there and say that a system is a viable option if that option is as trashy as our adoption system is because of a lot of the things that you sat there and mentioned. Oh, well, they could perchance get a chance of a loving family, like the hundreds of thousands of kids currently in the system. They have a chance.
Yeah,
Lots of
absolutely.
things have a chance. That doesn't necessarily mean that anything's guaranteed.
Yeah, and that's not even scratching the topic of like fetuses that are not viable for life, or at least not
Mhm.
a long life.
And then, like, there was another thing and I forgot it. Whoops. But, like, it's just, I'd say specifically that it's about controlling people because you get the end of it over here where it's if you have more people that can sit there and be put into these different systems, then you get more people that are into the same things, voting for the same people that you're in that are in power, so on and so forth, more for all sorts of the other issues that the US has. But like there's aspects about it where you just kind of hit the nail on the head. It's kind of hard to sit there and feel like anyone fucking cares when people can't get the medical attention that they need. The fact that the people who are crying out save the babies to try to stop abortion, majority of them voted against keeping baby formula at an affordable price.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of hard to sit here and look at these people and take them seriously. I saw a meme earlier today where it's kind of like it was a black and white picture. I don't know how old it was. It could have been something in regards because filters and stuff of the past countless wars that the US has been a part of. It's kind of like they called us baby killers before, now they're marching for their right to kill babies. Well, even if I assume that, a good majority of the people that are marching for their right to kill babies understand that people in the military didn't have a fucking choice. People haven't been being called baby killers from the military for at least the past 2 decades for various reasons. One of which being is that a lot of us recognize how predatory a lot of the US practices are. And it's not the people who enlist's fault.
Yeah.
And it's just it's a lot. It's a lot to deal with.
Yeah.
It's a lot to watch. It's a lot to sit there and like I don't know how much I vented about it to you, but I know in a lot of the other servers that I've been in, I've said a lot, and it's just I it's tough. I'm glad that I live in a state where I have the ability to go get medically checked out if necessary and not
Mm.
have to pay a dime because of where I'm at on the income threshold.
Mm.
That regardless of whatever people believe in regards to whatever, that their identities are respected, that
Mm.
their bodies are respected, type of thing. And it just, I consider myself very fortunate.
Yeah.
And it really sucks that a lot of the people elsewhere don't sit there and have these protections, don't sit there and have these abilities. It really bothers the ever living hell out of me that it's not universal throughout this country
Yeah.
because it could be.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's also something that we talked about when we talked about the different ways that racism manifests in Europe versus the US. It's
That
also
we
we
are one
talked
of the
about
most
whether or not the US is richer or not than Europe, and it depends on how you look at it. Because yeah, um,
per capita and dollar signs. Yeah, we are one of, if not the richest country in the world.
yeah.
Our
And
people
on
don't
the
see
other
it.
hand, I am richer than most of the Americans I've ever talked to, and it's
Mhm.
not like I've just chosen a poor demographic. It's just, or that I am particularly rich for being Swedish. I am not. I am average or below average. I'm unemployed right now. I've been a student for many years of my life now, a university level student, and I am still richer than most of my working American friends who have worked for years and years, some of them 2 jobs, if not more. That is insane. The country is richer, but the people, by and large, not so much.
You want to save the babies. You want to save your precious fetuses. Make things affordable. Make it so that way people have proper care. Oh, because and when I say this, I mean like also like prenatal care and stuff like that too. Because to be perfectly honest, when one of my exes and I broke up because she had a miscarriage. That wasn't why we broke up, but due to her having a miscarriage, she ended up, and because she went through the emergency room, she fought for at least 6 years afterwards to try to get that taken care of, and they were still trying to charge her an exorbitant amount of money. So don't say that because people like they have programs for people who can afford it. If it's an emergency, the fuck they do. Make things affordable, make it so that way people have care, and make it so that way people can actually sit there and do the things they want in their life. And I bet you that you'll see those abortion rates go down.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But, you know, dimes to dollars.
Yeah. And again, the discussion was never really about life is sacred. It's all about control.
Yeah.
And that's a sad note to end things on. This whole
Yeah, I
thing
was
has
gonna
been
say
a rant more than a ramble.
it happens. It happens. Oh. I mean, next time if you want to, in regards to like, since we mentioned child suicide and stuff like that, if I remember to, I can go over what's called an ACE score, if you want. That seems like a interesting topic in regards to mental health.
Yeah.
That's not related to role play. You know who you are.
Yeah. Shout out. Yeah. But I
But
still
yeah,
think it was an interesting topic to talk about and definitely topical right now.
important to talk about.
Yeah. And of course, not everyone's gonna agree with us, and some of the things we've said have been offensive, and some of them intentionally so. At least on my part, because I'm in a bit of a mood. Uh, so, I can be a bit extreme in my expressions, sometimes even beyond what I actually intend, but hopefully
Regardless,
not too
we
much.
said what we said. We made our points clear. Hopefully, we educated you on some aspects that or made you think about aspects of culture that you didn't think about before, or
Possibly.
positive things. Uh, yeah.
And with that, bye for this week, I think.
Bye bye.